Hello and welcome. My name is Kristen Rakin and I am the director at Spark Learning, and I'm also a board certified behavior analyst.
Hello, my name is Shelly Sully and I am also a board certified behavior analyst at Spark Learning. And here at Spark Learning, we provide behavioral therapy services for children and teens of all ages. Most of the individuals we work with do have autism, but many of the individuals we work with have other needs. In addition to behavioral therapy, we also provide parent training and parent support, as well as educational support and training and school consultations. We have a play-based and naturalistic approach here at Spark, and we really value that natural approach to intervention. And in addition to that, Kristen and I both also have young children at home and can empathize about how challenging things have been lately in the home setting. And we're here today to offer some support, provide you guys with some ideas, and Kristen's going to give you more of an overview of what we're going to be sharing today.
Great, thanks Shelly. Let's go ahead and pull up our PowerPoint here. Okay, so we are here today to talk to you about the impact COVID-19 has had on families and to give you some strategies to set you and your child up for success. Today we'll discuss strategies for helping your child understand, creating structure and routine, breaking down tasks, establishing motivation, teaching independence, and responding to frustration. We also have a list of resources that we'll share at the end. So let's go ahead and jump right in. COVID-19 has changed the day-to-day for many of us. For many families, the new normal consists of parents working from home, children at home all day, every day, online school, evenings and weekends at home. There are no longer extracurricular activities or they've moved online. We're all practicing social distancing. Your children aren't able to see the people they're used to seeing, like friends and family. And in general, there's just more talk about washing hands, germs, and staying healthy. With all of these changes come some challenges. Many of you are juggling working from home, having your children at home. With our kids being home all day, every day, it can be challenging to find ways to keep them entertained. I'm sure by now many of you have heard, I'm bored, I have nothing to do. And unfortunately, we can't tell our kids go outside and find a friend to play with. As a result, our kids are wanting more attention from us, and it's requiring more effort from parents to find ways to keep them engaged in independent activities. All schools have moved learning online, which is great, but it also requires parents and caregivers' attention and support, and at times can probably feel somewhat overwhelming. Outside of online classes, there's homework and projects that still need to be done, which again requires support from a parent or caregiver. And then there's explaining everything that's going on to our kids. Many kids are hearing their parents talk or overhearing things on the news. COVID and all of the changes that go with it can be really confusing and frustrating for our children. So today we'll talk about what we can do to help our children navigate these changes.
So the first strategy we're going to talk to you all about today is identifying ways that are useful for helping your child understand and comprehend the changes that have taken place in their world. These changes are difficult for all of us to grasp, and it can be challenging to decide how much information to share with your child or your teen, and how to present that information in a way that makes sense to them and that they can understand and grasp. So the first tool or strategy we'd like to share is the use of social stories. And social stories are written and or visual representations of information describing various social interactions, situations, behaviors, skills, or concepts that you are wanting to explain to an individual or teach an individual. Social stories can be incredibly useful for sharing information with individuals who have different learning styles or individuals who benefit from having complex information broken down in a way that's easy to digest. So whether that's because they're 3 and the world doesn't make sense to them yet, or if they're older, maybe they are learning more about their world, but they're needing some support with coping when things are new or different. Social stories are also great because it takes the pressure off of a parent or an educator or a caregiver to know exactly what to say or how to say it. So writing it out ahead of time or finding a social story that's already been written and is applicable to your situation allows you as a parent to decide how you're going to share or teach the pertinent information ahead of time without having to think on your feet, and making sure you're presenting it in a safe and meaningful way for your child. So social stories are, again, used to teach new skills or expected behaviors in new situations or challenging situations. And they really shouldn't be used in response to your to a child's challenging behavior or to anything that's come up that has been challenging. We don't want them to be used punitively or as a consequence to any kind of challenging behavior, but rather useful as a tool for introducing a new concept or a hard concept. So we have an example here for you. This social story is all about washing hands and why that's important. And so this social story kind of starts by just explaining the importance of washing hands, and then it goes into when it's expected to wash hands and the outcomes that will happen when you wash your hands. And as you'll notice, this social story includes simple language that's matter of fact, and it also uses pictures to support the teaching. Pictures aren't critical in a social story, but it can be really helpful to present information visually, especially if you have a learner who does, or a child who does benefit from visual supports. It can make it that much more meaningful. And then also this example is presented on one page, and that's helpful when trying to keep information simple, but it definitely doesn't have to be on one page. Some families enjoy making social stories in a PowerPoint, and then printing the PowerPoint and reading it with their child. And sometimes that's a familiar way. Children are used to sitting down and reading stories with their parents anyway. So that can be a really useful way to present information on a topic that might be sensitive or new or scary. So if you do decide you would like to prepare some social stories for your child, there are just a few things to keep in mind. When you are creating it, you want to keep your child's age in mind. You want to take into consideration their interests and also their attention span. You want to try to use vocabulary that your child will understand or that they're already familiar with. And it's important when creating a social story to use a positive and a patient tone. So this tool is really designed to educate, guide, inform, encourage your child. So it shouldn't be anything that's overly directive or threatening. And when you are writing it, you want to focus on describing the concepts first, and then providing guidance on what the child's or the individual's behavior in relation to that situation is expected to look like, or what they can do in response to that situation. So for example, if I were going to write a social story about going to the doctor, I might first describe why we're going to the doctor, and then go into what will happen when we're at the doctor, what will happen when we get there, what will happen during the appointment, what will happen after the appointment. And then I might provide some guidance on how the child might feel during the appointment. So I might say, you know, I might feel nervous or I might feel anxious. And if I do, these are things I can do in response. So if I feel nervous, I can ask my mom for a hug, or I can ask the doctor to take a break. So just providing that explanation first, and then that guidance second, without making too many assumptions about how the individual is going to respond. So we have included a few resources for social stories here for you all, and This first link is a link to a document that Carol Gray created. So Carol Gray is kind of the founder of Social Stories and created this concept. And so this first link will give you an overview of all of the different components to a social story and kind of talk you through that. We don't recommend going too in depth because we don't want this to be any source of stress for you as a parent. We just want it to be a valuable tool. But that link does provide some good guidance on how to keep those stories positive and like I said, patient, positive tone. And then the second link is to her portal where she's currently giving away free subscriptions, and you can create an account and log in and download and search for all different kinds of social stories. She has a lot of social story banks on her website. And then this last one is for the Positive Behavior Intervention Systems website, and it also just has a bank of several pre-written social stories. So if you're needing a particular topic and maybe you don't have time to create one yourself or want to get ideas from others, you can go click through those that are pre-made stories for you.
Next, we are going to talk about strategies for establishing routines and structure. I saw this picture online and I thought it really put things in perspective and was a good reminder of how challenging it can be for anyone when there's a sudden change in your routine that you aren't expecting, especially when you really thrive on that routine. The way many of us are feeling right now or have been feeling is how many of our kids feel anytime there's a change they don't anticipate. I know for me personally, my schedule is very important, and having a plan for my day is important as well. If I go to work and have no idea what I need to do or get done or who I have to meet with, I would feel pretty overwhelmed. Structure and routine is really important for everyone. As children are spending more time at home and doing schoolwork from home, it can be challenging for them to predict what will happen next or what is expected of them. This can often lead to challenging behavior. Maintaining a predictable routine and schedule is one of the most effective ways to prevent some of that challenging behavior from occurring. So when thinking about creating structure and routine, many of you may be wondering, where do I start? To help your child know what to expect day to day, it's important to create a general routine to follow. This doesn't mean every day needs to be the same or exact. Instead, it's about creating a general order to your day. This looks different for every family and every child. Your routine should be individualized for your family, driven by your family's goals and needs, and designed intentionally to set your child up for success. We'll talk more in depth about how to do these things in just a bit. When creating a schedule, you can create a schedule for your entire day or for different parts of the day. Often we recommend using multiple schedules in a day, so maybe a more broad weekly schedule and then a daily schedule that breaks down each part of your day. I'll show you some examples of what those could look like in just a few slides. Let's talk about some considerations when creating a schedule. Whenever you can, we suggest making things visual. Visuals trigger a different area of processing and can help your child understand. This looks different for every child depending on where they are at. Some children need pictures alongside words. Other children may just need the words written out. Just like Shelley mentioned, it really can look different. There are many ways to create visuals. You can use paper and pen, a whiteboard and markers, a Word document, clip art. At Spark, we use a fancy program called Boardmaker, really whatever resources you have available. I'll show you some examples in a little bit of visuals we created that can help you think about what type of schedule your child would benefit most from. When setting up your schedule or routine, it's important to make sure highly preferred activities follow tasks or activities that are more challenging. This helps motivate your child to complete the challenging activity. Additionally, it's important to ensure you aren't asking your child to leave their favorite activity to go to their least favorite activity. For example, if you know online classes are really tough, instead of having them go from iPad to online class, set the schedule up so they go from online classes to the iPad after. Now that you've created your schedule, there are several things to think about when implementing the schedule to ensure it's effective for your child. You want to ensure your schedule is somewhere that your child can easily see and access it throughout the day. Make sure you're referencing it before and after each activity. At first, you'll probably need to support your child through this process, but in time, they should be able to check their schedule on their own. You really want to get the child involved in the schedule process by having them cross out each activity after they've completed it, or if it's a Velcro schedule, you can have them take off that activity to indicate that it's all done. A timer is a really effective tool to use alongside of a schedule to show your child both how long an activity is going to last and when an activity is coming to an end. For example, you could set a timer to show your child their online class is 20 minutes long, or you could set a timer to show your child they have 5 minutes left playing outside. There are several great timer apps out there, but you can also just use the timer on your iPhone. There's this little circle that shows the time ticking away, which is a really great visual for children who don't yet understand numbers. If you're feeling anything like I am at times, you may feel like all you do right now is pick up after your children now that they're home all of the time. A great way to avoid this feeling is to make cleaning up a part of their routine. So this is something you can even put on their schedule. For example, your schedule may say Legos, cleanup, lunch, cleanup, outside. And then one really important thing to keep in mind is it's important to stick with it. Consistency is really key in teaching our children to follow that routine or schedule that we've created. It's important to remember that while we want to create structure and routine, we can still keep things fun and novel, and there are several different ways to do this. Instead of having all of our children's toys out, put some of those toys away and rotate them every so often. This will help prevent your child from becoming bored with what they have. Now that we're all spending more time inside, it's important to build in opportunities for movement, whether this is outside or inside. If you're not able to get outside, you can certainly do things inside, like have a dance party or set up an obstacle course. There's lots of different ways to get your child moving. Your email may be flooded with lots of different virtual activities, and I know mine is. Take advantage of some of these, but don't let them overwhelm you. Maybe pick 2 or 3 activities that you think your child might be interested in and try adding those to your child's schedule and routine. Outside of Monday through Friday, it's important to think about the weekend as well and how we can create some structure for our children on the weekend. So building a schedule is a good idea, and trying to get creative. For example, have your child help you cook, pretend to go camping, make Play-Doh. If you don't feel like you're the most creative person, that's okay. There are a lot of great resources online, and we have a list of those resources that we'll share with you at the end. It's also important to think about ways that your child can connect with family and friends now that they're not able to see them. Thankfully, we have technology to do this. You can even have your child play games with their friends or family online, which is really neat. My daughter actually has virtual lunch with Shelly's daughter almost every day, and it's a great way for them to stay connected. Next, I'm going to show you a few examples of schedules that we've created. The first one here is a weekly schedule. We used a program called Boardmaker to create this, but again, you could draw this or use Microsoft Word. It does not have to be this fancy. As you can see, this schedule is pretty broad and gives the child a general idea of what they will be doing, every day throughout the week. The next schedule is a daily schedule. This is a bit more specific and broken down. Both schedules, the one on the left and the right, have the same content, but you can see that it's presented differently. So the schedule on the left is just a simple handwritten schedule, and the schedule on the right is a schedule that was created on Boardmaker. You can even hand draw little pictures on a schedule that you write out if you feel like those visuals are important for your child. The last type of schedule we're going to talk about is an activity schedule. Here are a few different examples of ways you can break down different activities. So for example, online school directions, first get your materials, then you log into your computer, you go to your Zoom meeting, say hi, and then you listen to the teacher's directions. This example of farm is a play schedule. So how do we play with the farm? We broke that down into a schedule for the child to follow. And then we have an independent play schedule. So during free time, if your child has trouble really structuring their time and figuring out what they should play, you can help them structure that time by creating a play schedule with them. Here are a couple of resources to help you get started if you want to try using Boardmaker, which is how we created all of the visuals that I just showed you. There's a 30-day free trial in the first link, and then that second link is to Boardmaker Community, which is a place where users upload visuals they've already created to share with others. It's a really great resource. So I recommend before ever creating a visual, look online, look at Boardmaker Community, see if someone's already created what you're looking for, because chances are they have, and you can personalize it and make it your own.
All right, so next we're going to talk about a variety of helpful strategies for breaking tasks down into manageable chunks, manageable amounts for your child. And we're going to talk a little bit about executive functioning. So when talking about an individual's ability to organize their time, sequence or complete tasks, and prioritize information, we use the term executive functioning. And there's definitely a significant amount of variation in the executive functioning skills of each individual. But individuals who do have needs in this area may have difficulty organizing information or tasks needed to complete a routine. And in some instances, these challenges can lead to anxiety and confusion when an individual is needing to complete a task with multiple steps. It can seem overwhelming. So examples of routines that do require a certain amount of fluency with executive functioning include completing homework assignments, organizing or structuring downtime. So what do I do with my downtime? How do I set that up? How do I find something productive to do? Or taking an online class. That's definitely something that a lot of individuals are having to learn how to do and navigate. And now more than ever, we might see individuals getting stuck completing these routines or tasks. So one tool that we do have for helping work on breaking down these larger tasks is called a task analysis. And this is simply the process of breaking a skill into smaller, more manageable steps. So we're going to take the example of washing hands. It seems simple. Washing hands seems pretty simple. But if we wanted to complete a task analysis for that, we would find that there are actually quite a few steps to go into it. So first you need to turn on the water, and then you need to pump soap, but you need to get the right amount of soap, not too much or too little. Scrub your hands for a specific amount of time, rinse the soap off, dry your hands off, turn the water off, and throw the towel away. So you can complete a task analysis for something simple like washing hands, or something more complex like having a conversation or completing a homework assignment. And we really recommend that if your child is struggling with some of these bigger tasks throughout their day, or you find that for certain activities they are getting more frustrated, that you kind of think about how you can break it down for them or how you can break it down with them. And once you have broken down that bigger skill or that bigger routine, you can watch and see where that frustration or that struggle is coming into play and provide support or guidance for your child accordingly. And then a really valuable way to put a task analysis to use for your benefit or your child's benefit is, again, to make it visual. So here we have an example or a couple of examples where we've taken the steps of different task analysis and put them into a checklist. And so by taking the task analysis and putting it into a checklist, your child can go through and cross off the tasks that they've completed and see what's next. And these checklists can be as simple as writing a list on a whiteboard or a piece of paper, or making it more visual with pictures next to each task. And another thing to keep in mind when your child has a difficult routine or task to complete is making sure that they're motivated to do it. And Kristen kind of alluded to this earlier. This motivation piece is so important. So she's going to talk to us a little bit more about that piece.
Before we jump in how to establish motivation, I want you to stop and think about something you absolutely hate doing because it's really difficult or challenging. Now, if I told you I was going to pay you $1,000 to do that activity or that task, would you be more motivated to do that thing that you absolutely hate? Most of you are probably nodding your head and saying yes. It's important to remember that motivation is strongly influenced by internal and external incentives to engage in a task, our expectations of success or failure with a particular task, and then how meaningful a task is to that person. For example, as a parent, you may think online school is really important, but your child may not see that importance. They may find it really challenging and may not be intrinsically motivated to participate. So it's our job to show them the importance and find ways to encourage and motivate them. So let's talk a little bit about how you do that. Before you present a challenging activity or task, make sure your child is motivated. One simple way to do this is by offering choices and asking them what they want. When we offer choices, we give our children a sense of control and autonomy, which motivates them to participate. For example, when it's time for online class, instead of asking them if they are ready, let them know it's time for class and ask them if they want to sit at the desk or on a beanbag and what fun activity they want to do afterwards. After you establish what they want to do after that challenging activity, use language like first then. For example, okay, first it's time for online class and then we can go jump on the trampoline. If a task is particularly challenging, it's okay to start small and reduce the amount you are asking them to do. It's better for your child to experience success and then work your way up. As we all get caught up in our days and our routines, at times we might forget to point out and provide praise to our children when they're doing what we want them to do. It's really important that we aren't constantly or only giving attention to behaviors we don't want to see by telling them to stop or what not to do. So make sure you're taking time to provide praise and attention when you see your child engaging in those behaviors that you really do want to see. There are several different types of incentive systems out there that you can use to show your child how much of something they need to do to earn whatever it is that they want or they're working for. A token board is just one example that I'm going to show you today. Again, you don't need anything fancy to make a token board. It can be something you draw on a piece of paper or something you create online. When using a token board, we want to start small to ensure our children experience success and then work our way up. So for example, you may give them a check for every math problem they answer. And then after 5 checks, they can play Legos. After they do this successfully several times in a row, you may increase the number of checks they need to earn to 10 checks. The token board on the right-hand side is a Velcro token board. So that might be something you personalize for the child with something that they're really interested in. For example, maybe this child's really interested in Minnie Mouse, so that in and of itself is really motivating. And every time they do something that you want them to do, you earn a token. It's important that when you're using a token board, the child knows what it is that they're working for and how they earn those tokens. So if they are getting a check for every math problem, make sure you tell them that ahead of time. Hey, you know, every time you do a math problem, you're going to get a check. And then when you get all your checks, you'll earn Legos.
All right, so the next set of strategies we're going to talk about is teaching independence. And Once an individual has access to structured routines within their day and they have tools, or you've kind of prepared or discovered tools to help them manage the tasks, we can really start focusing on increasing independence. So there are a few things to consider or think about when it comes to being independent. It might mean that an individual can do something without help. It might mean that they can occupy their own time without needing direction from somebody else to give them ideas of what to do when they have some downtime. It might mean that they've learned how to take initiative to do something without being asked or told to do so, or it could mean that they know what's coming up next without being specifically told what to do next. So teaching skills of independence and autonomy are always important, and now that we have all of this time at home, it can be a great time to focus on these skills. It's really important that as our children grow and age, we are making it a priority to teach them independence so that as they do get older, they have some responsibility, and it's been something that's been developed along the way. All right, so as you start to think about all of the routines or tasks that your child carries out each day, which there are many, it can be kind of overwhelming to think about how to go from where they might be to having all of those different things be independent, or can be tricky to know where to start to increase some independence. And we really recommend starting small. So start by identifying 2 or 3 skills or routines that you want them to become more independent with. And it could be self-care routines like making their bed, getting dressed, making their own breakfast, depending on their age. Or it could be things like completing schoolwork, cleaning up their room, doing chores. We do recommend that all children ages 3 to 4 or older have some age-appropriate amount of chores that they're completing at home each day, again, to start teaching that independence and that responsibility and autonomy at a young age. So you want to also identify your child's current level of independence with the skill you're trying to teach. So where are they now, and where do you want to see them go? How independent do you expect them to become with a skill or routine? And to kind of identify how independent you want them to be, you do want to take into consideration their age and their motor skills and their executive functioning skills, and all of those things can kind of play into how independent you can expect your child to be. And we do want you to remember to keep it manageable and reasonable. You don't want to increase expectations too quickly or too rapidly. That could lead to your child becoming frustrated or stressed, and then potentially the process taking longer. So we really do recommend starting small and incrementally building up from there. And you're also going to want to determine what support your child will need while they are learning this new skill. So you can prepare checklists, kind of some of the examples of things we've shown you all today. So checklists, visuals, token boards, having a timer handy. Kind of want to gather that stuff ahead of time and have a game plan ahead of time so that you can really set your child up for success as you start working on some of this. And when we think about teaching a new skill, we always want to focus on providing more help up front and then fading that help over time as the individual becomes more independent. So if you're unsure that your child is going to need all of those tools from the beginning, it's better to prepare and have them so that you can present them initially and then fade them back as it's appropriate to do so. So we have a few examples that we're going to go through of what it might look like to teach an independent skill or an independent routine. And we've really selected skills that you're likely to be encountering in your home every day, and skills that we've had some input from other families and parents saying, my child's really struggling with these things. And we recognize that parents are trying to work and trying to run a house while also having their children present and needing their attention throughout the day. So we hope that these scenarios are applicable, and we'll kind of walk through the process here for increasing independence. So let's say that your child currently attends to online class for just 2 to 3 minutes at a time, and then they get up and walk away from the computer. And so again, we're going to start small. Our goal here will be that we'd like our child to attend for just 5 minutes. That seems like a reasonable increase in independence with a small amount of help or intervention. So first, we're going to use a visual schedule to show the child when class is during the day and make sure that they know it's coming and that it's, they're not surprised by the start of an online class. And then we're going to identify reinforcers that are meaningful and effective for the child, that your child, and that they're individualized for your child. So you can give them choices of activities to earn after they've completed their 2 to 3 minutes of class. And we'll recommend using a token board and a countdown timer to show the child how long they need to attend. And then after each minute, we would provide a token. Or if you don't have an actual token board and you want to just draw some boxes on a piece of paper, you would start with 2 to 3 boxes, one for each minute that they're attending. And you would let them know of the contingency up front, really clearly state, okay, first school, and then you can take your break and color if that's what the child's chosen. Let's just say that's what the child's chosen to do for their reinforcer for this. And so for the very first week we're working on this, we're going to sit with the child and provide frequent praise and give them a token or a check every minute that they're attending. And after the child reaches the goal, we're going to increase the time to attending for 10 minutes and provide a token every 2 minutes. So your child, let's say that you set this situation up and your child does beautifully and you think, oh, they did great, they didn't really need all that, I'm going to go ahead and jump to 10 minutes. We really recommend taking it slow and sticking with a slow incremental increase to make sure that you've established those new routines before moving on. All right, in our next example, we're going to talk about how to teach your child to play a little bit more independently. I think this is something that a lot of children do struggle with, which is knowing how to play functionally and independently with several toys. So in this example, this child does know how to play functionally with several toys, but they only want to play with mom or dad. So mom and dad can't get anything done because the child is constantly needing their attention while they're playing. So our goal here is that this child will play with 3 toys or activities independently for 5 minutes each. So wouldn't that be beautiful if you had a 15-minute window every day where your child entertained themselves and you were able to unload the dishwasher or do a load of clothes? So we're going to start by setting up an activity schedule with the child, and we're going to include them in creating this schedule. So we're going to give them choices and allow them to have some say in what they play with. And then maybe we'll read a social story explaining the child's expectations for when it's time to play by myself. We'll remind the child that after the last activity, they will get to play with you. And that will be part of the contingency. So first play by yourself, and then you'll get to play with me. And then we're going to set a 5-minute timer and tell the child when the timer goes off, they can check their schedule and move on to the next activity. We're going to provide frequent praise for playing independently throughout that 15-minute time interval. And after the child reaches the goal, increase the time to 7 minutes within each activity, or 7 minutes with each activity. And something that is kind of important to note here is that you are going to want to give your child, when they're taking on a new endeavor or learning a new skill, you're going to want to give them some attention and acknowledge them and acknowledge their efforts more frequently up front to just make sure that they know that they're doing what's expected and keep them on track. And then you can slowly fade out some of that attention and some of that support. We do recognize the whole idea here is independent play, but just remember where they are now and making sure that you're meeting meeting their needs with where they are now, with the idea that you'll slowly fade back some of those supports and attention to get them to be more independent. All right, the next example is doing a worksheet. So let's say we have a child or an individual that gets upset at just the sight of a worksheet. Maybe they've had such a hard experience or an aversive experience with worksheets in the past that they just get upset at even the sight of one. So if that's the case, we're gonna, again, start small, make a reasonable expectation for this child. So all we're going to ask them to do at first is complete 3 steps of a worksheet with help. So we're really just trying to desensitize how hard a worksheet is. We're going to read a social story explaining the expectations for doing the worksheets. And then we're going to give the child a choice of what they want to earn after they complete those 3 steps. So we're going to make sure we build that motivation before presenting it. And then we'll use a token board to show them how much work they do need to do. We can also provide them with a checklist to break down the steps of completing the worksheet. So what exactly does that need to look like? Do they need to write their name? Do they need to read the directions, follow the directions, whatever it is for that specific worksheet? We're going to provide frequent praise and tokens for each step along the way. And after the child reaches their goal of doing three steps in a worksheet over the course of a few days or a week, however long it takes, we'll slowly start to increase and maybe expect the child to complete 5 steps of a worksheet and get that established. And then eventually we can expect them to complete an entire worksheet. And then maybe after that, we can work on fading ourselves out and having that become even more independent.
Okay, so now that we have all of these great tools, what happens when you use all of these tools and your child still ends up frustrated? I'm going to share a few strategies you can use in these moments. When children are frustrated and don't know how to effectively communicate that frustration, it often leads to challenging behavior. To avoid a big behavior from occurring, help your child use functional communication to get their needs met. For example, teach your child how to ask for help, a break, ask for a hug, or how to get your attention. The key to this is anticipating their frustration and giving them the language and then acknowledging what they're telling you before they're too overwhelmed. So for example, let's say your child starts to show signs of frustration over a worksheet. Encourage them to say, "Mom, I need help," and then immediately acknowledge that by telling them, "Thanks for telling me you need help," and then provide them with the assistance that they're asking for. Cool down cards are another type of tool you can use. Cool down cards are cards that provide coping skills, suggestions and steps for calming down. It's important that when you're using a cool down card that you have it before your child gets frustrated and that they're present during any activity that might elicit some of that frustration. Cool down cards should be personalized for your child with calming down strategies that really work for them. I recommend creating these with your child, have them get involved. They can even help write or type, or they could draw little pictures on them. When creating them, give your child some options of different strategies that they can choose from. Again, this gives them some autonomy in their decisions. As you're creating these, keep in mind some strategies can be used in one setting or activity, but maybe not another. So for example, maybe reading a book is a good cool down strategy if they get upset because you tell them they have to put their video games away. But reading a book might not be a good cool down strategy to use if they get upset during an online class. So it's really important that you have a variety of cool down strategies for your child to choose from and that you're providing them with the strategies that work in that scenario. So let's talk a little bit about how to use these. Like I mentioned, prior to a challenging task or activity, you want to have these cards present. Make sure that, again, they're appropriate for that activity. So they're strategies they can actually use during that activity. As soon as you notice even a little bit of frustration, you'll want to gesture to that card and help your child use that strategy. So if it's taking deep breaths, gesture to that card, and then maybe start modeling how they can take those deep breaths. Make sure that you're providing lots of praise for using their cards appropriately and for staying calm and using that strategy. Here are a couple of examples of what a cool down card might look like. The first one might be used with an older child. There's a little bit more text in this example, reminding the child how exactly they can use that strategy. For a younger child, it might be something a little bit simpler with, a picture and maybe just a little bit of text, again, signaling to them what strategy to use and how to use it. And these can be something you make on a computer, or like I said, you can get your children involved and they can actually handwrite these or draw their own little pictures.
All right, so we're going to have an array of and visual supports that we'll have available through the Autism Society for you all to download following this presentation. So we'll have a COVID-19 social story, a social story on washing hands, social story on wearing a mask, which we might need our children to do, or our children will likely see somebody wearing a mask. And so we'll have some guidance on that via a social story, an online school social story, and then we have a variety of templates that will be available: a cool down card template, a first then visual template, and a token economy system template. And then we also use washing hands activity schedules all around Spark. We have one on every sink, and so we'll provide that for you all in case you want to have one at your house, in your bathroom or your kitchen, to help guide your children to effectively wash their hands. And then we will also include a list of links to a variety of educational resources, and then also some just fun movement activities that you all can look up. We know that there's a lot of resources out there floating around, so we definitely don't want to overwhelm you, but there are some fun things to do and to add to your daily schedules. So, and then we've also included our email addresses. We'll be answering questions following this presentation, but in case you missed that opportunity, you're welcome to reach out to us over email. We'd love to hear from you.